So hit it.
Hello and welcome to This is the Play Sports, the podcast. It's Saturday morning. It's way too early. It's 9 o'clock in the a.m., but it's all right. We're podcasting. We got some good friends with us. Why don't you tell us who we have today, Dad?
Well, we have a Highland High connection, which is tough for an East High guy to handle, but they're good guys, so I'll forgive them.
Us Piedmont guys are indifferent.
Yeah, most guys that are Rams are wannabe Leopards, from what I understand. But anyways, we have Bryan Brown from UteZone.com and Locked on Utes. And then we have my buddy Mike Sorensen, longtime colleague of mine at the Deseret News, sports writer and sports columnist. Guys, good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with Mike too. We were talking earlier that he used to officiate me in ward ball games, so my memory's a little fuzzy. Hopefully, I never got teed up or anything like that.
Yeah, I should have called more fouls on you though, but I'll let you go.
Do you have a quick whistle, Mike, or were you did you let the kids play?
Oh, I usually let them play, but I didn't take any crap from those guys though.
Mike was stern but fair.
Okay, stern but fair. I'll take that.
I'm just envisioning these Bryan Brown elbows coming my way under the boards. It's a horrifying thought. I'm sure she caused a lot of bruises for a lot of guys over there.
Yeah, Bryan, I wouldn't go in the paint with you in there.
I wouldn't either, so I get it.
Good to have you guys. Hey, let's talk about the Jazz. Last night, their 9-game winning streak came to an end, but I don't know if you guys watched the end of that game. I was impressed that the Jazz never gave up. And then Donovan Mitchell made it a game right to the very end. And to me, that was, sure, it was disappointing they lost, but that was impressive. This team seems really dedicated to winning. Mike, you've covered the Jazz. What do you think of this team and their win streaks and their best record in the NBA and all that jazz, so to speak?
Yeah, I agree. I don't see all the games these days, but I saw the last half of yesterday's game, and they, it was like they're down 13 with two minutes to go. So, I figured it was over, and I turned over to the news, and I kind of came back, and then all of a sudden they're down by like 5, and then they're down by 2 with about 10 seconds to go. So they had an outside chance to send it to overtime, but that's just kind of the group they are. But no, they're doing awfully well. I think they just got such good depth. They got such good balance on the team this year. And, my one concern is their 3-point shooting. They just love that so much that, like last night, they weren't hitting them. So when they don't hit them, it kind of hurts them, So they kind of fall in love with that, and it's taken them a long ways, but I'm just afraid that if they keep it up, if they have these bad nights, they're going to lose a few games. But otherwise, they're just doing, I think they're doing great.
Bryan, what do you think? Live by the 3-pointer, die by the 3-pointer?
I mean, this team is built to do that. And I think what's been interesting about the last few games coming into this game against the Clippers is that they hadn't really shot great from beyond the arc, and they were still just steamrolling teams. What really gives them a unique option on offense is the ability to roll Rudy Gobert to the rim, and he just doesn't miss when he's inside the painted area. And we talk so much about how bigs don't go down in the paint and don't have moves or anything like that. Like, if you throw the ball up, Rudy's going to dunk it, and that gives them a really impressive advantage. Even if the threes aren't falling, they can still get inside, and you still have to respect them, defensively around the arc because of it. And so I don't know that they are, and they shoot so many of them that eventually they're going to get enough to fall. I think the only rare occurrence that we've seen with a team like that is Houston in the playoffs against Golden State.
I was going to talk about that.
They missed like 20 in a row. And so if you get one of those games, maybe you'll get in trouble with it. But I think really what they've done is, and Quin Snyder, as we know, is just a mad scientist with this kind of stuff. He's figured out what the math is, how many threes they need to take, and he's gotten these guys to buy into it. And so they're going to shoot their way out of any slumps that they're into, even during a game, with how many that they're shooting, to where the numbers are eventually going to get them to where they need to be. And I think that defensively, they're good enough to where they can afford to do that.
Austin, what's your thoughts? Austin and I've kind of had a debate of which Jazz team was better, this one or the teams that went to the finals in 97 and 98. And being old, I take the old Jazz myself, but I do respect this team. They do have a desire.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the difference in play style, I think, would be really interesting to watch, because we talked about this last week, how Jerry Sloan and that group, really wasn't shooting a lot of 3-pointers. It just wasn't a part of, the NBA game plan at that point. And, I would be really interested to see, how, that they would match up. We did an NBA 2K21 simulation, which was incredibly accurate, I thought, especially when we saw Rudy Gobert dribble the ball between his legs 3 times and shoot a 27 footer. So, it was a pretty good simulation.
And Stockton never passed to Malone.
Stockton was incredibly selfish that night for whatever reason. But, what's interesting about what Bryan said, and I was mad that he brought it up because I wanted to bring it up. The Rockets actually missed 27 consecutive 3-pointers in that game in 2018. The math on that works out to like a 1 in 72,000 odds of that happening. So it's really unlikely that we'd see, Utah dry up like that in the, when they need to. So I think they're good enough that they wouldn't have to deal with that. And like Bryan said, they'll shoot enough that they can stay in the game.
And let's move to quarter 2, guys. Let's talk about the All-Stars. The starters were named. No Utah Jazz players. Quin Snyder, though, is coaching Team LeBron. So I guess technically they got somebody mentioned early. But there's a lot of debate, guys, about whether the Jazz deserve 3 All-Stars this year. People forget it did happen once with Mark Eaton, Stockton, and Malone back in the day. But I'm not sure that they're, despite having the best record in the league, that 3 is even a possibility. What's your thoughts, Mike?
Oh, I'd love for him to get 3. I'd love for Mike Conley to be an all-star. He never has been. He's had a terrific career, and he's never made an all-star team as far as I know. And so I think, obviously Gobert and Mitchell will be shoo-ins. And after they've, it's kind of a question the last couple of years about whether they should make it or not. And having the best record in the league, obviously they'll be in. And if you remember about 3 or 4 years ago, Golden State had 4 guys, which I thought was a bit much when they had the best record, and that's extremely rare. There have been a few teams, the Celtics have had 3. I mean, so it's possible, but I think what's going to hurt Conley is the fact that he missed 5 or 6 games recently. And so even though he has the best plus minus in the league right now, and he's had a terrific year, I'm just afraid there's too many good players in the West that they're just not going to say we can take a 3rd Jazz guy and they have all these other great players, and it's just the numbers will just hurt him.
What do you think, Bryan?
It's an interesting debate. I think Conley is definitely deserving of it, and it was fascinating to hear Charles Barkley talk about how he thought actually Jordan Clarkson deserved an all-star bid even over Anthony Davis, because he thought Clarkson was having a better season than Davis was having in relation to their talent. And I think that's how the all-stars should be determined. It shouldn't just be a lifetime achievement because the guy's really good at basketball. So yeah, let's throw him in the game. And then you hear other people talking about how Rudy Gobert shouldn't be in it because he's not any fun to watch, which is a lie. He was awesome last year and was one of the highlights of the All-Star game. He and Donovan made that game so much more fun and competitive to where everybody bought in at the end. So I think Conley deserves it. I hope that Quin gets some sway with it to where he can maybe choose him if a guy decides to sit out because of injury or something like that. But he definitely deserves it. And we can't always just look at the guards in the West that are good and just say that they should automatically go in there. Jamal Murray's not been great at all this year. And so if he gets in over Mike Conley, I think that's an absolute crime.
Austin, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that, we brought up Anthony Davis, as being, a guy who's considered a shoo-in. I think he could actually be the linchpin in this situation because, he recently suffered, what kind of injury was it? An Achilles tendonitis. So he'll be out for a couple weeks. They're saying it's pretty unlikely that he'll be available for the All-Star game. So with him out, I think that opens a spot that probably ordinarily would be filled with a guy who, probably is just an assumed all-star every year. So I do think the Jazz are going to get 3, and I think they do have a shot at 4 even. I think 3 is more realistic than what we've been describing the last couple minutes. So,
well, I think Conley's injury obviously came at a horrible time as far as, when the consideration for the All-Star game kind of heats up. Mike, do you see a scenario with 3?
Yeah, like I say, it's just a numbers game. I think they deserve it. The fact they have the best record, you can make a good case for it, but it's just a matter of the fact that you can only get, is it 15 total? I mean, that
something like that, yeah.
or is it 12? I forget, you know.
It's 12 total.
It's
Yeah.
12.
Well, 12 makes it even tougher. So there's all, you know, when you have 15 teams in the West, you know, to get them in, it'd be hard.
It is. Well, guys, quarter 3. Let's talk some college hoops. Bryan, the Joe Lunardi's latest has BYU getting in as the number 8 seed, playing Pac-12 superpower, and I use that word with quotation marks, UCLA. BYU worthy of an 8 seed in your opinion?
Sure, they've done the best that they can with the schedule that they've had, and I think in a year where COVID has just really put every program on skates, especially if you look at the net rankings, it's bizarre to see Duke in the 70s, right?
Right.
And North Carolina in the 40s, and all these blue blood programs that are not having a lot of success this year. I think BYU's done a good job of replacing guys. They've been competitive in pretty much every game that they've played. The best in their conference, Gonzaga, is basically untouchable. I think they're probably the best team in basketball, arguably. And so I think 8's probably a good spot for them. The WCC is a conference that consistently gets 2 or 3 teams in. And if BYU is your second team, I think 8's a fair ranking.
Mike, talk about BYU a little bit, and then Utah State's listed as first 4 out right now. And the Boise games obviously didn't do them any favors, but tell me what you kind of foresee, and do you think Utah State can bounce back and get back in the field?
Yeah, I think that loss last night or this week really hurt them, you know, because they had 2 chances to play at Boise, who's probably going to make the tournament, and they lost them both. They were on the road, but the fact they lost both of them, and they lost them pretty close, but they were already on the bubble, and they're on the last 4 out, like you said. So I just think those really hurt them. They needed another quality win, and that league is not that great. And so they beat San Diego State early on, but they just don't have a chance to kind of improve their standing the rest of the way. And who knows about the conference tournament, you know, how that's going to go, if these things are going to even be played, or if they'll be played with not all the teams in them and stuff. So I think it's going to be hard for them to make it. BYU should make it. You know, they've had just second best team in that league this year, should put them in, and probably that's a fairly good seed for them to be 8 or 9 right now.
Austin, what are your thoughts? We've talked about the conference tournaments, whether they should be played or not with COVID. That would eliminate the possibility of a Cinderella getting in, and it could tighten the field up. And then this week, the NIT announced they were going to have a 16-team field and bring all the teams to New York. So there is an NIT for a Utah State if they don't get in the tournament. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think some we talked about how some teams aren't even going to be interested in playing conference tournament, you know, like the Gonzagas and all that. But, you know, for our in-state guys, they're going to really depend on a good showing in the conference tournament, or, you know, winning it outright to make it in. You know, just looking at the standings across the board, across the state, you know, I think one team to look out for that could have a chance is maybe Southern Utah. They're having a particularly good season. Right now they're second in the Big Sky. Weber State's third. So that's a conference that, you know, does not merit 2 bids to the big dance. You know, the second seed in conference tournament's good enough to, you know, have a chance at winning it. So I think we could maybe see the Thunderbirds sneaking in if they win. So, you know, those are the type of teams that are really, you know, begging and hoping for conference tournaments.
Well, it's like Mike said, if there's no conference tournaments, then Southern Utah doesn't have a chance.
No, they don't. Yeah. So they need the conference tournament.
Mike, what's your thoughts on conference tournaments? Do you think they should be played this year?
I don't know. It's been such a goofy year this year, you know, and I feel for the teams that's the only way they have a chance to get in. But I also worry about the fact that they have them, then, you know, there's a chance of the good team getting a couple players sick, and then they can't play in the NCAAs, and it wouldn't be fair to them. So I can see that point too, you know. I mean, I love the conference tournaments. I love going to Vegas every year, going to 3 different tournaments in the same day, you know. But then maybe this year it might be best just to kind of, you know, just go with the regular season. It's been such a strange year, and just go with that. And you didn't talk about Utah. What about your Utes? Do you think they're going to go, Dirk?
It doesn't look promising for the Utes this year.
Brian's
but,
laughing.
Yeah, Brian. We purposely didn't talk about Utah. But,
I wasn't gonna say anything because I've watched every Utah game this year, but man, it's tough to see that program where it's at, without a doubt.
It is kind of bizarre, after the years of success that they're hurting, but it'll be interesting to see. And, probably, things work out the way they look like they're going to work out. It'll probably just have one team that gets in, and that's BYU, and Utah State maybe flirting with it, but not getting in. And, not going to be a real productive year NCAA wise around here, but we're getting kind of used to that as time passes. There's some years where there's not a lot of representation from the state in the tournament, and then there's some years obviously where we've had a bunch. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. Fourth quarter now, guys. Let's talk baseball of all things. Baseball. It started. Spring training has started. I think Sunday they start exhibition games. The season's supposed to begin April 1st, but the owners and the players are still fighting over things because the owners wanted to delay the start of the season and play a 154 game schedule and thus prorate the salaries of the players from 162 games to 154. I mean, they're talking, I realize there's millions of dollars on the line here, but this seems kind of crazy. Bryan, are you optimistic that baseball will start on April 1st?
I hope so, just because I'm a Padres fan, and this is the first year we've actually had a team that can compete.
They spent some money, didn't they?
They did, and the bank is empty now, but the team is loaded, so I guess that's a good thing. But this is a long-standing labor issue that seems to be coming to a head at the worst possible time for baseball. And I thought last year they had an opportunity to really capitalize on coming back early and being the first ones to get back to playing, and they managed to botch that. And we've seen continuously over time that they've not ever found a way to get on the same page and really promote the league the way that they should. And so I don't have a lot of faith or hope that this is going to go smoothly. Obviously, I'll keep my fingers crossed that things start on time, but it's hard to argue against all the evidence that you have.
Mike and I, back in the day, we used to hit a baseball game when we go on football trips and that. And Mike likes those guys with the Red Sox. Mike, what do you think? Do you think baseball is going to start on April 1st and they're going to get 162 games in and all will be well? Or do you think this is going to be a rocky road?
Well, it's just like everything else in sports these days, the fact that the virus kind of controls things. And, it's obviously been great news the last couple of weeks, a month or so, it's been going down. And if that can continue, I'm in favor of them starting right on time, because that gives them a chance to build in some extra time or during the season, where if they do have some teams that can't make it, they can maybe make up some games with double headers or whatever. Right. I would actually be in favor of the 154 game schedule though, because that way it does give them some leeway, in case something does happen where they don't have to, everybody has to play 162. Plus I'm never liked the World Series in November, and that's just the way it goes these days, because they have this long schedule and long playoffs, and it's just, you're playing in bad weather in November. So, and actually 154 used to be the norm back when, just before I was born. I mean, it was back in the 50s, that was a normal thing. And I know it might, upset the records and so forth, but I'd be in favor of maybe a little shorter season, and maybe this would be a year to at least do that, but, have a lesser schedule because of the virus in case something happens during the year where things flare up. So, but yeah, I hope they can start on April 1st and have a more normal season this year and have a few fans out.
Austin and I don't know what the World Series is as Seattle Mariners fans. We have no idea. Is that for the championship or something?
They still have a team up there today, Dirk, in Seattle. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What's funny is I pulled up their depth chart to see just who's on the roster, and I think I probably only heard of like 2 or 3 of these guys. So, yeah, I mean, I'm indifferent about the start of baseball. That's just a byproduct of cheering for the worst team in the league's history. I'm more excited for minor league baseball being back for sure. Being the Bees fan that I am. This might interest Bryan and Mike to know. I've actually worked as Bumble a couple times. I put on the costume a few times. So yeah, I have a pretty strong relationship with the big fuzzy bee fella.
Awesome. Hey, we're doing our closing segment, the parting shots. Bryan, you want to go first?
Absolutely. Thank you first of all for having me on. It's always good to talk to you, Dirk and Austin, and Mike, who's somebody that I actually grew up idolizing and reading and thinking to myself, like, that's a guy in my neighborhood and he writes for the paper. I always like to, remind myself that this is a fun gig and I'm lucky to be a part of it in the small way that I am. And so I'm always appreciative for these moments where I get to come on and share my opinion. I think for me right now, my hot take is that this Utah Jazz team deserves respect as a championship team. And that's not coming at it from a Jazz fan. It's just looking at who they are, how they're built, and what we've seen in the past. You look at the Jazz and you can compare them to those Pistons teams of the early 2000s. I think the 2016 Spurs are a team that I look at and think to myself, that's a team that Utah can base its identity off of and build towards and be a legitimate championship contender, because those Spurs teams were built around team ball movement. They were built around team defense. They had a player that was impactful on defense at the rim in Tim Duncan, who, in my opinion, is one of the best defensive big men of all time. And that Spurs team, which took its identity from the earlier Jazz teams, is now paying it forward to where this Jazz team should be considered not only a championship contender, but also a team that really can defeat LeBron and the Lakers and or the Clippers down the road. And so that for me is where I stand in terms of how good this Jazz team really is.
I've always kind of felt that the Jazz should hang a couple of the Spurs championship banners in Vivint Arena, just with how much they've emulated that program and how much those two franchises are like seemingly connected.
If you're going to hang one for Garth Brooks, you might as well hang one for the Spurs, right?
Great point. Yeah.
Garth is a legend. Come on. Mike, what's your parting shot today?
Well, everyone's excited about the Jazz with good reason. And, the BYU basketball fans are excited about their team, Utah State. There's a few teams around the state that we talk about, but one that's gone totally under the radar right now, and we didn't know what he talks about, is the Utah women's volleyball team. They are undefeated. I remember talking to Beth Lanier back in September, and she told me, we're going to have one of the best teams in the country, and I kind of scoffed, said, yeah, right, but it's turned out, they're the best team in the Pac-12 right now, 8-0, and they, unfortunately, they got bit by the COVID bug this weekend, and they had to cancel their games against Oregon. So, but otherwise, they've been just rolling through the Pac-12 thanks to, Danny Barton Drews, whose mother was someone that at least I covered. I can't remember if you did, Dirk, Mickey Connie Barton back in the day. She was a great basketball and volleyball player. And then her brothers, Cody and Jackson Barton, are in the NFL now. So it's a great family. And she's kind of been their star player the last couple of years. But, after this Oregon week, they have games coming up against Washington is number 10, UCLA's number 12, and Stanford's number 23. So anyway, they got some toughness coming up with South against some better teams. But for now, you got to give credit to Beth Lanier and their team, and hope they get going again pretty soon. And who knows, maybe they'll be in the Final Four of the volleyball this year.
That would be cool. Austin, what's your final thoughts?
Okay, this is going to blow your minds. I've kind of been following collectible sports memorabilia for a little bit. The NBA has a new product out that is will literally sound insane, but there seems to be something to it. They're selling digital collectible cards right now on a website called NBA Top Shop. They're officially licensed by the NBA, the NBA Players Association. But these things are going up in value like you would not believe. And I would encourage anybody who's listening to check it out. It's pretty interesting to watch. Me and my friend have kind of been playing around with it for a little bit. I bought like a Nikola Jokic card for like $15 and turned around and sold it for $50 later that day.
Burgers on Austin.
Burgers on me, right? So it's Bitcoin, blockchain based. There's a Donovan Mitchell card right now, a holograph card. This is digital, so it just lives on the internet. It's going, the lowest price right now is $18,000. So, and apparently someone paid $100,000 for a Zion Williamson card last week.
That was Mike.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah. That was you, Mike. Cool. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Congrats. So
I think I'll pass on this business. Yeah, but anyway,
it doesn't make any sense to me. In the same way that like Bitcoin doesn't make sense, but apparently this is going to be like a super hot thing. So I get in on it before it gets crazy is what I'd say.
All right. My parting shot is a shout out to my friends up at the University of Utah. My colleague Jeff Call ordered this book that I was involved with several years ago. And then Paul Kirk helped him, and everybody at the U football office signed it with a little note saying, wishing me well in my unemployment era that I'm in right now. And I thought that was real nice. And so a shout out to Coach Whittingham and his staff up there. That really meant a lot. And Jeff Call and Paul Kirk for putting that together. I was really humbled by that. And so that was pretty cool this week for me. And what would be really cool is to get another job. So
if you know of anything, let us know.
Yeah. I have, I have some minimal things I want, $1 million a year, things like that. But we'll discuss that.
There's some wiggle room. Yeah.
But thanks again. Now is we decided to move our weekly prize drawing to the podcast. So we'll do that now. I'm going to turn the camera just a little bit to show you some of
there's our stuffed animal collection.
There's our stuffed animal. There's some of the stuff that is available. There's Jazz, Utes, Cougars, and can't see it very well, but it's good stuff. So let's see who the winner is this week.
Yeah, you guys would not believe how many stuffed animals we have here, by the way. No. Okay, so I got the wheel of names here. These are all the people who have entered in our newsletter. Thanks to everybody who has. I'm going to go ahead and just spin the wheel and randomly select a winner. Is my mic still? Okay, there we go. All right, the winner, Grant Burton. All right, Grant Burton is our winner. I think he's related to Jimbo. So
I think that's his son.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. That's
You
exciting.
have the right connections. The wheel will stop in your favor. Right?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. Yeah.
But appreciate it. Guys, thank you for joining us. Austin, take us home.
Yeah. Follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn as well. I put us on LinkedIn. You get this podcast, subscribe to it, leave a review, and appreciate your support. Thanks to Mike and Bryan. This is a fun time.
Thanks again, guys. And we have some good stuff from Mike on our website that he's reflected on his career, and very interesting stuff. And I think Mike's met everybody and interviewed at just about every big star in sports. So go to the website and read it. And then we're trying to get Bryan to write some stuff for us too. So we'll get on that. Even though you're Highland guys, I respect you guys. So thanks.